Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I think you guys all know me. I'm Brad Zelnik with the Software Equity Research Team at Deutsche Bank, and we are really delighted to be hosting for this latest installment of our Disruptive Security Series, none other than Shlomo Kramer, who is co-founder and CEO of Cato Networks. Shlomo, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Brad. It's a pleasure.
Always. So format of this session is going to be a chat where I have a bunch of questions I want to go through with Cato, with Shlomo, so we can learn more about Cato and gain Shlomo's perspectives on what's going on in the world. Maybe just to jump right into it, Shlomo, you've been in cybersecurity for many years. You were one of the co-founders of Checkpoint, literally a pioneer in network security. It would be great just to hear how you see the landscape today and how Cato Networks plays within it. What was the original founding vision of the company?
So this is a really exciting time because I lived through the previous two phases of network security. I would say this is the third phase, and I'll explain. The first phase was the phase of software. So kind of a Checkpoint, I personally wrote the first Firewall 1 and put it on a floppy disk, if anyone remembers what it is. And, you know, we were off for the races, right? And then I was lucky enough to be the first investor in Nir Zook, that new company, Palo Alto Networks, that was actually creating the first enterprise-grade UTM or next-generation firewall, and started that generation of network security. But by the time we got to Cato, Gur Schatz, my partner, and myself, in 2014, end of 2014, it was clear that the appliance was the wrong form factor for network security because it caused the perimeter to dissolve. And all these point solution, Swag, CASB, ZTNA were appearing as cloud proxies because of the appliance was not in the line of sight of branch office users, of SaaS applications, and of remote users wanting to connect to AWS data centers. So the idea was to recreate the perimeter as the third form factor in security, which is a cloud network, and embed security in the cloud network and create a service, a cloud service that is fluid and delivers that security to anywhere that users, IoT devices, microservices, applications, any controllers, everything that needs security resides. So that was kind of a fluid third generation form factor that we invented, and Gartner called SASE 4 years later and defined it as the future of networking and network security. So obviously it's been pretty exciting since then.
Yeah, I thank you very much for that background. And I think a lot of what you said today, people are somewhat familiar with, but I think you put a point to it when you said it was only then 4 years later when Gartner coined it SASE, because I can recall you basically sharing that same exact vision and storyline. That was 2015.
Right.
You were the first to really impress upon me the need for this type of solution. But just to drill into what Cato actually does, can you maybe share for us what the core product offerings are? How is the portfolio split and typically consumed and deployed by customers?
Right. So today, basically, the definition of what Cato does is the category called SASE, single vendor SASE by Gartner. And it is essentially a converged network, a network security stack delivered as a cloud network. We have over 85 POPs around the world that runs this stack and serves essentially all edges. Whether you're a mobile user or a physical location or a cloud data center, you on-ramp using our agent or our SD-WAN device or our vSocket virtual SD-WAN device in the cloud, and you get a slice of a global secure cloud network that carries both your traffic to the internet and both your corporate traffic east-west between the elements of the organization. This is essentially a SASE, and the best and easiest way to think about it, it's like AWS for networking and network security.
Got it. And in terms of the customers that you serve, any particular segment, geography, or industries where you have particular strength and why? And in terms of who you sell into within those organizations, is it a networking buyer, a security buyer, perhaps both?
Right. So first of all, this is a huge market. Gartner defines this market as $20 billion by 2026. And that market is eventually going to cover the entire pyramid of mid-enterprise all the way to the high-end enterprise. The place where this market started in 2015 was the mid-enterprise. And it started because the problem that SASE solves is the problem that IT is bogged down with complicated security stack and networking stack and can't move at the pace of the digital business. And the entire idea of SASE is essentially to, just like AWS, take the ownership of IT and deliver back the outcomes, the business outcomes and security outcomes and networking outcomes for the customer. And by that, accelerating the pace of IT, reducing the cost of IT, reducing the need for expertise in IT. And that's something that is most acute in the mid-enterprise. If you look at the fat waste of the economy, the 50% GDP of the mid to large enterprise, that's where the pain is most pronounced. You know, very large organizations can throw money at the problem, throw talent at the problem. You know, a hospital in Alabama, a large global manufacturer, a large retailer with thin IT can't do that. So that's where we started. And we've been moving up the stack and serving larger and larger customers with many multi-million-dollar ARR customers now, and eventually we'll get to the 8 figures customers as well. Everybody will enjoy the benefits of cloud delivery and convergence to provide powerful simplicity and acceleration of IT eventually. So the overall business model was going wide in the mid-market and taking that offering, that platform offering up market as the years go by. And if it sounds familiar to somebody, that's actually, going step by step with kind of the strategy of Fortinet from 20 years ago.
Got it. So huge opportunity. A lot of it starting in the mid-market, you're continuing to rise and land larger and larger customers and develop those customers. And if I reflect back to close to a decade ago, nobody was really talking about this. Now that it's established by Gartner, everybody understands the need, the world's shifting to cloud. There's obviously competitors, which is testament to how exciting the market is. If we think about Cato's positioning, Shlomo, and the actual differentiation that you have versus the primary ones that we hear out there when it comes to SASE, Zscaler, or Palo Alto Networks, even a Netscope or a Fortinet, Cloudflare. I mean, there's a bunch of names that are saying similar things. How should we think about Cato's positioning and the core technological or architectural differentiation? Like, why do you win versus them when you win? Why do you lose when you lose?
So let's start with the statistics. I can talk all day about the differentiation and why we are still the only platform company out there competing against portfolio companies, still the only company that built from the ground up a SASE solution versus came out with a bunch of acquisitions and stuff after Gartner defined the SASE. But the most compelling thing I can say is that our conversion from POC to win is 70%. So 70% of and that's against all competition, Palo, Zscaler, Fortinet. If customers try the product, they feel and understand the differentiation. And let me talk a little bit about the differentiation in the context of three buckets of competitors, right? So I would put one bucket are the appliance, the second generation form factor players. I would say that the poster child of that is Fortinet. That essentially is an appliance company, right? It's converged both networking, SD-WAN, and security into an appliance, but it's not SASE. It's not cloud delivered, and it doesn't have the fluidity to deliver this as a single solution with a single console to anywhere in the world where you need that security, which is it's simply not a SASE solution because it's the wrong form factor. The second category is I would put actually a duo, Max and Moritz of SASE, which is Palo Alto Network plus Google Cloud, GCP. And I put them together because what happened was that Google rushed to the market, I would say aggressively, in order to protect its install base. Perhaps the most aggressive move from all the second generation firewall players. And in doing so, it duct taped a solution. It bought an SD-WAN company, and then it took their own appliances and threw them on Google Cloud, and most of the IP in a virtual machine, single tenant type of thing, and most of the IP is Google's. So basically the hosting, the data, the compute, the most important, the networking, which is a huge part of SASE, is Google. Google Network, Google POPs, Google Data. And unless Google gives so first of all, it's a very pedestrian solution and very hacked solution dependent on where Google is. Only 20-something locations versus our 85 and growing to 120 in the next couple of years. And so it's a very pedestrian solution. But the more important thing is that unless Google gives their IP for free, the gross margin of that solution is very different than the straight gross margin of Palo Alto Networks. So when this scales, rushing to the market is going to create a huge problem from a gross margin perspective to Google, and that's going to translate to a customer pain at the end of the day. So that's absolutely the wrong train to get on in terms of future prospects of this solution. And the third solution are the old-timers, the companies that grew out of the dissolving perimeter. The fact that the second form factor overstayed its welcome as the implementation of a firewall. The swag companies like Zscaler, the CASB companies such as Netscope and the ZTNA, which basically all these proxy companies added. And they are, kind of converging these proxy overlay architecture that is simply very, very limited. It's just web traffic, it's overlay, it's not infrastructure, it doesn't enjoy the benefits of visibility of all traffic that the firewall has. It's, 30 years ago, proxy lost to network firewalls. That's going to be the same case here. It's just north-southbound. If you've got a malware in an office and you have SMB, Microsoft file shares, it's going to propagate east-west, and Zscaler can't do anything about it. So this architecture is absolutely a dead end. And we are seeing Netscope capitulating with buying an SD-WAN company, trying to kind of work it out. Zscaler capitulating with their strange box that they've just announced. I still fail to get it. It's not SD-WAN, but it's an overlay of SD-WAN, and I don't quite get what, obviously they had to do something because all the SD-WAN companies are not driving business their way anymore because they have their own cloud security. So that's completely dead-end architecture. So you see three dead ends. Wrong form factor, a wrong cloud, and the wrong architecture, while Cato really is really a cloud, fully cloud architecture built from the ground up, 80 POPs, provide 5 nines, completely scalable, 80% gross margin, all based on all commodity, like a Cloudflare or a Fastly. We came from that world and know how to build that. We don't need Google. And finally, we have the right architecture. We are not proxy-based. We are network-based. We embedded the entire security stack, not only the 3 patches, ZTNA, CASB, and SWAG, but also everything that you would expect from a Palo Alto network next-generation firewall into a single global elastic firewall in the cloud that is embedded in a highly available, robust network. So hugely differentiated, only vendor in the world that has that. And it's a huge moat to get to where we are.
Shlomo, thank you so much for taking us through the landscape very meticulously and taking through these 3 different categories, because I think it really helps to frame where you play and what the differentiation is. And unsurprisingly to anybody who's listening, I sent you a bunch of topics ahead of time, but I'm not sure I included something that obviously is I think important to the overall industry. It's only in the last week or so that you had Microsoft come in and made some press releases and talked about product functionality in the category as well. Any thoughts there in terms of what they're doing?
I think that Microsoft is very weak on the network security side. Microsoft for years had I think it's called, I don't even know how it's called, Azure Network, which basically competes against us on the use case of the networking part of SASE, but it's a non-player, and we never meet them, and it's and I think what basically I saw is a non-product right now. It's years behind their competitors, which are Zscaler and Netscope, and also they completely chose the proxy approach, which again is misguided and is the wrong approach for the future. The right approach is, what Palo and us and other players have taken, which is kind of the network approach. So I think, one, I don't see they're as strong on the network security side as in other areas in the enterprise. 2, I see that they chose to organically build this at this stage, which is extremely difficult. And 3, they chose the wrong architecture. On the other hand, they are strong enterprise players. They've got ELAs. They've got the usual tools for a kind of a large company like that to fight, and they are going to influence the network, influence the market. So
I think we've seen it before, and I'm sure it will take time to see for them how it really evolves and if it ever turns into something that's taken seriously in the market. But in the meantime, like you said, they certainly have a significant customer base, and a significant channel. But maybe just moving on to some other aspects of what it is that you do. When you're typically going into an account, what, if anything, are you typically replacing, and where does the budget come from on the customer side?
So there are three main doors. The main door is one transformation. So essentially the old network that was designed for backhauling into on-prem data centers and remotely accessing VPN concentrators needs to be turned inside out to a kind of direct internet access type of wide area network, and that requires replacement of both the network infrastructure as well as the security infrastructure and additional security infrastructure, because we've got many more exit points, and that has been the kind of the major driver to our business originally. The second is security. So that's replacement of MPLS, SD-WAN, cloud security or firewalls, remote access solutions. They usually replace multiple players. And then there's the second door, which is the security transformation. Essentially, I've got a lot of firewalls on-prem, and I want to replace them with something that is much less, and perhaps I've got proxies in the cloud, and I want to converge them all and provide a much more coherent and efficient security stack. And the third is even a notch back, which is I just want to fix my remote access. I've got a hybrid workforce, and I'm going to start with that. We also have people that just want to do the network and stay with their security solution, and we can offer that. So what's important is that we offer a platform, SASE, but that platform is very modular and allows us to insert ourselves seamlessly, whether you want to transform just the security, just the network, just the remote access, or all of them. And we've got customers of every type.
Excellent. I know before you referenced this being a very large $20 billion market. If we look out over the next, 5 years, Shlomo, I'd be curious what your thoughts are. If it turns out it was a $25 billion market, what needed to happen? How do you see the market evolving? And then maybe as part of that, is there an argument that SD-WAN is a transitory or solution that becomes obsolete over time, or is that not?
No, SD-WAN is a feature. There's this thought that SASE is SSE, which is kind of the cloud security stack, plus SD-WAN. And that's completely not the case. The core of SASE is the cloud network, is the 85 POPs that we have that work together and jointly creates this elastic cloud network with end-to-end routing, optimization, and security, and serves all edges. One of the edges is an SD-WAN edge, and that's an on-ramp. ZTNA is an on-ramp to that network. IPsec is another legitimate on-ramp to that network. So SD-WAN is just a feature, and it's never been a market in my mind. The largest, I think, acquisition in that market was sub 1 billion. So it's everybody knew it's just a feature. So that's on that. In terms of the future of the SASE market, I can say that 20 billion is the market definition as it stands today. So basically, Gartner did a simple job of saying, okay, this is the firewall slice, this is the CASB slice, this is the ZTNA slice, this is the SD-WAN slice, and so SWAG slice, so on and so forth. and it's summed up to be 20 billion. But in actuality, and that's also what Gur and myself had in mind when we started, SASE is not only a market, it's a concept. And it's a concept of how do you provide powerful simplicity for IT so it can move at the speed of digital business. And convergence doesn't need and will not stop at networking plus network security. We are in EA of expanding that to endpoint security, IoT security, LAN security, all of that combined under the umbrella of XDR. Now, this is a much bigger market. It essentially is all of infrastructure, security market other than the cloud, which I believe is right now a completely different platform, CNAP, if you are familiar with the Gartner name, and is really too hot to converge because it's too young and unclear how the chips are going to fall. But kind of in the traditional areas that I mentioned, absolutely, we are going to converge all of them. We are very open about that, and that's a much bigger market than just 20 billion.
Wow. Massive opportunity. I mean, in terms of adoption curves, I always, I often, as a starting place, think about S-curve adoption. I think at this point, this is, at least as we know it today, an established enough market with a lot of the players that we've already talked so much about. But any thoughts? I mean, obviously there are some macro forces at play right now, and I don't know if a tougher environment, in some respects, even may accelerate the transformation for some customers in certain segments for you. But any thoughts just in general in terms of adoption curves and what it looks like from here?
Yeah. Look, the last year was a tale of two halves. We had a very strong first half, and then 20% trimmed off the top against our plan. We always beat our plans. Trim of the top of our plans in Q3, a little bit better in Q4. Q1 we already beat again the targets, and also in Q2. So I don't know what to say. It's two good quarters in a row, so I don't know what to say. This is a replacement market. This is a re-architecture, a modernization type of project. You can always wait with them. You can always size them down and start with a smaller scope and then expand. So obviously, recession has or slowdown in the market or whatever you want to call it has an impact, but the market is very vibrant and we are seeing it growing, and it's a very strong and growing market even in these days.
It's great to hear. Shlomo, you talked about, or you asked the question of who remembers the floppy disk. I remember the 8-inch before they got to the 5 1/4 inch. So yeah, I remember those days. You're the godfather of firewalls, and I've got to ask you this: where do you think the firewall market will be in 10 years from now? I mean, I in the past have talked about firewalls becoming the mainframes of security. It would seem there's always a need for a data center firewall. You're in the business of a network solution of delivering a cloud firewall. But how do you think the market for firewall evolves and maybe redefines?
I think firewalls are going to continue to prosper, and as I said when in the start, I think we are actually in a very exciting period in the life cycle of the firewall market, because like 20 years ago when we transitioned or 25 years ago, when we transitioned from software-delivered firewalls to appliance-delivered firewalls, we are now moving from a solid appliance with geographical location that can protect a geographical place to a fluid firewall that its form factor is a cloud network, and it's embedded in it, and it can flow to wherever security is needed. And that's an exciting third iteration that I'm glad that I'm lucky enough to lead as well with Cato. And I strongly believe that this is the future, and what's actually going the way of mainframes are the overlay proxy architectures, because they came out of necessity, a necessity of folks that didn't control the underlying network because it was the open internet, and didn't, were basically, putting together a solution to serve the application people. And eventually what you need is an infrastructure solution, also in the cloud, because that's where most of the infrastructure is going to be. And that infrastructure is going to be a network. And the firewalls are going to live in that network. And actually, it's, 30 years ago, I talked with Ted Kozel, which was the CTO of Cisco at the time. It was the early days of Cisco, early 90s. Said, why do you need this firewall? We are coming out with Open iOS, and iOS back then was the operating system of Cisco routers, not of iPhones. Mm-hmm. And you can embed your security stack in the router. Who needs another box on the server back then on the network? And obviously, since then, it's been kind of the goal of many different Cisco, Juniper, startups to embed the security stack in the network fabric. And finally, the day arrived that we can do that, and we can do that because the networks are software defined in the cloud. And that's where firewalls are going, and it's kind of an exciting place.
It's certainly exciting, and it sounds like you're really well positioned for it. Shlomo, can you just give us even a quick sense, your go-to-market, what distinguishes it from others? What's your philosophy on go-to-market these days versus prior models? I mean, the world's changed. You don't need a golf-playing salesperson to show up maybe with a PowerPoint deck like you did 20 years ago to the customer. How do you get as much productivity and throughput out of your go-to-market?
So first of all, we very different than Zscaler or Netscope that went after the tip of the pyramid. We decided to start at the mid-enterprise and go up market. Again, which immediately meant that we are a channel company. And we've been a channel company since day one. I can say that more than 70% of our new ACV, every quarter it fluctuates, but on average, comes from the channel. And the other 30% that comes from Cato is fed into the channel to develop the channels. And I think that's kind of a main go-to-market differentiator for us. We have a very strong channel all around the world. We've got telco channels, security channels. We've got telcos. We've got SIs. So really a broad variety of players, both in networking and security side. And it's going to be a process because SASE is the convergence of networking and security, and also these channels are each learning the other side of that SASE coin very successfully because it's very lucrative. So we are creating essentially the SASE channel. And finally, I would say that the third element of our strategy, so we talk moving up market, being a channel company, and third is going broad and deep with our platform. I believe that the future of security is platforms. Basically, the exhibition hall of RSA is unattainable. and customers cannot manage that. And you need a few large platforms to be your security partner. And that's what we are driving. And that's from a go-to-market perspective, a huge advantage for us because it allows us for zero friction upsells. For example, in the first 45 days of having CASB, we sold more than 100 customers. Today, almost 20% of our install base is using CASB, kind of a year and something into it. And we are continuously cracking more and more security capabilities. I kind of hinted to that earlier on, and we are able to do that because we are a platform. So the fact that we are a platform has a major influence on our go-to-market because 90% of engineering is done in the platform, and each blade is just 10% of it. It's very much like CrowdStrike. If you look at the graph of add-ons that CrowdStrike has, it's very similar. So yeah, so these are the three elements.
Thank you. And any broader thoughts just in terms of, the cyber, VAR channel over many years, very specialized, but I feel like it's evolved in recent years, more managed service providers, especially in the last year or two. I think you've seen a lot of transactions happen through cloud marketplaces. And it sounds like you've built out a tremendous channel and continue to grow along with those that specialize in security and networking and telcos and those that we would expect. But any other thoughts just in terms of for the broader industry, how it evolves?
Yeah, when Checkpoint, again, I have to say, when Checkpoint started, there was no security channel. So the security channel emerged from the network channel, actually. Most of our original salespeople were Synoptics, Bay Networks salespeople. And I think what we are seeing now is the kind of the coming back to that. And network security and networking is fusing again to a kind of combined offering, at least until to organization up to a certain size. And that has a big influence on the channel, but it's a good influence because, a big portion of the dollars that were part of the wider network were always going to the telcos for MPLS. It really depends how you count, whether you count the last mile or don't count the last mile, but it was many tens of % of the deal. And that was never available to the channel. Now with SASE, this is available to the channel, and they are definitely taking advantage of that. What's also interesting, perhaps the last word on that, on the kind of overall development, is that they used to be kind of a detente. There used to be Cisco providing boxes to AT&T, providing service. And now that detente is done. Cisco is providing a full stack service and Palo is providing a full stack service. So that world has moved to be an AWS world. Cato was the first, but now everybody is moving in that, or a lot of vendors are moving in that direction. And that forces the telcos essentially to forfeit MPLS and to forfeit that middle layer of the overall one solution to the customers. You've got the underlay, you've got the overlay, and you've got the managed services. And they are, becoming a reseller of a less lucrative business of other players. And we are very much targeting these channels today with the telco sales organization. And that's a huge change in the world where it used to be completely separated, and now it's going to be more of an AWS-like world with the telcos becoming partners versus competitors.
Thank you for that. I want to be respectful of your time. You've been very generous with it. So maybe just if I can, a few more. And before I forget, we're financial analysts. In our world, we all like to count things. What can you tell us about the key metrics that you use to track the business? What have you said publicly around the overall scale, growth, number of customers? Anything like that would be great.
Yeah, obviously we are a private company, so at this point we're a private company. So we've got more than 2,000 enterprise customers and north of 60% growth rate in revenues, and kind of moving up market quickly. Got kind of the larger customers are growing much faster than the revenues, and kind of that's I can talk about the past, right? We grew from $1 million to $100 million ARR in less than 5 years, which is world class when you compare it to other companies like Zscaler or Cloudflare or any of these companies. We are continuing to see very strong demand in the market. Our customers love our product. For example, our G3R is north of 95%. They continue to buy more of the product. So our NPS is high and our NDR is very high. And they kind of the prospects see the differentiation in our solutions. 70% of our POCs convert to win. So it's more about how fast can we grow in the market, how fast can we grow our partner network, how many at-bats can we get, rather than anything else. Our product is ready for any type of customer today.
Excellent. And Shlomo, I mean, you've been involved. You're actually quite humble for just given how many successful ventures you've been a part of as an investor, an advisor, an operator. You've done so much. And right now, I think generative AI is just taking up so much mind share and everybody's talking about it. I'd be curious your perspective on generative AI for both good and evil in cyber. Is it overhyped? Is it underhyped? What is the timeline for which it maybe will have an impact? How do you think this affects the whole landscape for cybersecurity in cyber defense as we've known it for some
It's obviously every invention that in human history, its first application was a weapon or war. If you invent the trains, then that you can transport a large amount of soldiers quickly, and there's World War I. If you invent the atomic energy, then the first thing you do with it is atomic bomb. So I'm sure that human nature is going to find creative ways to use generative AI as a weapon. And I think, from my perspective, the most obvious problem that we have at hand is not necessarily the traditional hacking, etc., but actually knowing what is right and what is wrong, right? And knowing what is truth and what is lie. And that's actually a very interesting area in my mind in security, which hopefully somebody is going to attack with a good solution. And perhaps the platform players needs to attack that first. Facebook, Twitter, all of these guys. But it's also a very good tool for defense. We use it in Catos solutions as part of our XDR to kind of surface much better productivity for the SOC and much better explanations and much better kind of organizing principles that even you don't need sophisticated SOC engineers. You can have a simple security engineer look at it and understand. We use AI all over the product to, we were actually the first company in the world to put AI inline as protection mechanisms. We just announced it a few weeks ago. So yeah, AI is going to be used both on the offense and defense like anything else.
Awesome. Listen, Shlomo, I can't tell you how grateful I am for the time that you've spent, for you sharing your insights. It's truly a privilege. Maybe with that, to wrap up, is there any one or two takeaways that you'd want to leave investors with as it relates to the opportunity for Cato?
Yes, I think we are in the beginning of a huge cycle in security in general. That is a cycle of convergence and cloud delivery and providing powerful simplification for IT that is driven by an absolute necessity to move at the speed of digital business. And that's not going to stop. That's just going to grow, and its scope is much beyond networking, network security. And Cato is at the forefront of that major movement. So that makes us a very interesting company.
No doubt. Well, very exciting to hear of all the success to date. We look forward to keeping track of your bright future. And with that, thank you again so much, and thanks everybody for joining. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.